Hey everyone, this is Randy Searles, and I'm about to be joined by Dan.
What's up, Randy?
Saved by the Bell.
Just
So,
sliding in.
so I'm Randy, former Green Beret and Ranger, 20 plus years in the military, and now I'm a developmental editor, book coach, and ghostwriter, primarily for vets. Though I do a lot of other genres, fantasy, science fiction, thrillers, and stuff. And Dan and I are here to answer any questions that people have about the publishing industry, about how to write, and the editing process. And I'll let Dan introduce himself.
Hey, Randy, Dan Pace here. So I'm a retired Green Beret too, and I'm a guy looking to become a full-time writer. So I've got 4 books out now, working on the fifth, and I've learned a little bit about how to make that whole system go and how to make a little money off of it, how to get the word out there. And my hope is to share some of that knowledge with folks who have questions about the process, like how do you get from an idea to an actual book on the street in somebody's hands. It's a lot of twists and turns there. So hope we can save some people some pain.
Yeah. So I just, uh, well, 2 of your books were memoirs that you let me edit before they went out. That was great. And then you got a third one coming out, and now you're working on a compilation. So I thought we'd talk about memoirs and the types of memoirs out there and processes and things like that today.
No, that sounds great. I'd love to.
Hmm. I'll start with just got off the phone with someone who found me on LinkedIn, and they're like, "Hey, we want to do a partnership with you." And they're a pub. I get these a lot. They seem like the better part of some of the ones I get, but they're like basically they're hybrid publishing company. And I know, and when I talk to them, I'm just like, they're like, "Oh, we're going to give you we'll give you a percentage and blah, 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 or give you a finder's fee." And I was like, "That's great. But I got to tell you, I just don't sell you guys very much. There's some people that want you after they finish with me, they're like, "What next?" I'm like, "Well, you can do this." Like, I don't want to do all that. And if they have money, I'm like, "Well, you can find a company to do this for you." But 70% of my clients are vets and they're not rich. And I was like, I just don't think most of my clients are going to be able to meet your price point. And he's like, "Well, yeah, we are looking for a specific kind of client. We charge our base thing is 17.5 thousand, 17,500." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I probably 10% of the people that I work with are interested in that, but that doesn't mean I can't send a couple people your way." But there you can, like, Dan is a perfect example of kind of give you a way forward for the most part. A lot of times, because you write once you get everything down, and Dan can probably elaborate on that, whether but the advantages of having an editor. But after the content is complete, and Dan's very famously said, "Hey, that was like 20% of the work. Now I got to do the real work." The marketing, the publishing, the cover art, the formatting, the copyright, the ISBNs, all that piece. It takes work. And a lot of authors are like, "I'm an author. I don't want to do that." Well, then you're going to pay. There's people that will take your money to do that for you. And some of them will do it good, and some of them won't do a very good job. So you're going to have to vet all those people. And I try to dissuade them. I try to say, "Hey, just take a couple weeks and you can do almost all of this by yourself for very little money." But what's your take on that, Dan?
Yeah. So I think what you said, that it's a service and it costs money, right? That's the reality. It's a time versus money game. And I think, man, we circle back to this a lot, but the question is, why are you writing this book? Now, when you get the content correct, for a lot of people, that's enough, right? Like if you have the content correct and you are writing this book so that you and your family have a record of what you did, so you have a story of what you did, you went through and you edited it well, you've got a solid one. The rest of the publication process is really simple. Get an ASIN, go on Amazon, step through the bookshelf process. You could publish that book. It will be done and live, and you won't cost anything. It won't cost anybody a nickel. Now, it's never going to sell anything. And so just make that real clear. Like, it's never going to sell many copies, but it's not going to cost you a lot more money than it costs to produce that manuscript. Now, if you want to get into, I want my book to be a book that people can buy, will buy, gets lots of reviews and moves, then you do get into the part of the service that's going to either take you a lot of time or take you a lot of money. I, like you, am very hesitant. I get a lot of offers from people who are like, we're going to take your book to the next level. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I mostly ignore most of that on Facebook and LinkedIn not because I don't think the service could be valuable, but I have no way to vet the people. And I don't have the desire to spend a lot of money on a service that sucks. And I just don't know how to sort out the true from the bullshit in the claims, the reviews, all the substantiation. You look at them, you're like, I just don't know. Is this true, or am I going to waste a bunch of money and get nothing for it? And the conclusion I've reached is that I just got to do it myself. I wouldn't be terribly opposed to doing it for somebody else, but the problem is I would feel bad because it would be hard to guarantee returns. And so the idea that I would take 17 grand from somebody to do the stuff that I've done for my books, and then there's a very real chance that they're not going to see anywhere near $17,000 back ever. Like, my books since started selling have made, like, I don't know, $6,000 in royalties. And that's in the last 2.5 years with, at this point, thousands of copies sold. So, I mean, 17 grand is a high bar for one book's performance. And if you're going to go that route, I mean, why aren't you just traditionally publishing? Like, if you truly don't want to do any of the work and you want mass distribution and you're not worried about somebody else owning the rights and all that stuff, like, maybe that's just a better fit for you. But again, I don't know. I mean, I know that was a lot of words, but the reality is, one, there's a lot of work to be done, and you will either pay somebody or you do it yourself, or you can just pare down your goals a little bit, understand that I'm going to write a book, 100 people are going to read it. It's 100 people that I care to read it. I don't really care about the rest of the world, and just call it good. You can do that very, very, very cost effectively.
I mean, the thing I liked about this company that I just talked to, and that a lot of other companies don't say, is she's like, hey, we don't do the marketing piece because there's no guarantees. We have some people that we compare them up with, but they're not affiliated with us. We're just referring them to it, but we don't do the marketing piece. It's too, we're not going to continuously market. No one does that, right? They just market for how long you pay them to market for. But we're going to do we're going to do a developmental edit if they need it. If you come from a ghostwriter like you, we probably don't need to do that. So it cuts off a couple thousand right there. We're going to do the copy edit. We're going to do the proofreading. We're going to give you, we got some artists that are going to use stock images to make your cover. So they're not going to hire artists to do it. They're going to have a graphic designer, design your cover, that's perfectly. And they used to do a lot of business books, right? They do a lot of people who want to build a brand and things like that, as opposed to memoirs. And then we'll help them get their ISBN and their copyright and register them with the Library of Congress and all of that, because some people just don't want to do that, right? It doesn't cost a lot of money, takes a little bit of time and effort to figure out how to do it, and that's it. And once again, it's a little bit overwhelming for some people. I mean, I deal with a lot of vets that are older, in their 70s and 80s, and they don't have the patience for that. And sure, so they're like, they'd rather pay someone to do it, and a lot of times they do, as long as they know what they're getting themselves into. And the biggest thing is the marketing. Like, I don't want to do the marketing. It's like, as the author, you have to do the marketing, because no one's going to do it for you unless you want to pay a crap load of money all the time. Because people only market for, even a big 5 publisher is only going to market that sucker for like a month after it comes out, and then they're never going to mention it again, which I always thought was kind of weird, because they have skin in the game. They own part of the royalties. It seems like they would look at those and say, I'm going to do Facebook ads. I'm going to do Amazon ads. They'd had some dedicated people to doing that. But the reality is, most of the books you're going to sell, if they market it right a month before it comes out, are going to be in that first month. And then they're like, it's not worth it's not worth the burn to kind of invest in this. That's what they think. But there are a lot of indie authors that are continually marketing their book, and they're continually making an income every month because they're marketing their book. And I don't understand why I guess if you're only not making 100%, but you're making part of the royalties, maybe it's not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for them. I don't know. But yeah, go ahead.
I have a guess. I think that when you start getting into the trad publishing world, all the numbers change and the metrics for success change. So I was looking at my Ingram Spark stuff. If I want to sell to a wholesaler, I've got to mark that guy down to 40% so that the retailer, like somebody like Barnes and Noble that stocks it and isn't just print on demand, will carry it because they're going to make their money in that margin right there. Now, that means that my ability to make money on a copy that I sell drops a lot, right? A wholesale price on a book, my ability to print in mass is low, so I'm not going to make much money on that wholesale price at all. Now, the publishers, they know they're going to make a killing that first month with the book sales, but their killing isn't quite as direct, right? It's not like the number of copies sold is directly how they make their money. It has more to do with like how many people order it, stock it. They got to deal with returns. They got to deal with like it going to the stores. And I got to think that for most books, after that initial push, their ability to get on the shelf at Barnes and Noble a year after publication is low, right? Because other than new releases, you're competing with like all of book history for shelf space on that particular bookstore. And so their print run's got to be low. And so by the time the print run gets low, their costs go up per book. And therefore they're just kind of losing. I mean, because they're not selling the same way, they're not selling direct off the stores. I got to think there's just something in the business model related to those points that mean that it is just no longer profitable for them to drive, like, let's say Amazon print on demand sales. Like, I don't even know if the big publishers do print on demand. Like, does Penguin Books have an Amazon site where Amazon sells print on demand for Penguin? I bet not. I bet they sell out of a warehouse. And so I bet that just changes the whole metric. That's my guess.
I feel like this is, I mean, and like you said, I don't know what the numbers look like, but if you as the publisher create the website for the author, and how hard would that be after you make one or two? Like, hey, here's the template, change the colors, put the cover up there. Now you have a store, and then you decide you believe in this book. You believe there's an audience for this book. And then you take over Facebook ads and because you're getting 85% of the thing. And if you're selling directly from your website and you're marketing on all the social media for this book, and you can make a YouTube, or you can make a Instagram, a TikTok, and a Facebook just for this book, for this author and this book. And then you can just start, marketing it just like a indie author does. And you're getting 85% of the profits. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, if you do that for every book and every single that you believe in, that you bought, that you decided to publish, and you're making for every one of those thousands of books, let's just call it 1,000, round up, you're making 1,000 books for that. That's $1 million. Why wouldn't you do that?
So I just Googled while we were talking, George R.R. Martin's publisher. He's published through Simon and Schuster. They got a page for him. It's right there. It sells his stuff. So maybe they do. It's just got to be worth the cost of whatever designer they have on staff to do that hourly rate. They're like, yeah, only some people though. I mean, if you're that guy, I'm sure that they've been over backward to make sure he's.
If you're Martin, I mean, someone like Martin, his books are going off the shelf just because he's on his shows on TV. He doesn't need to market the dang thing anymore, really. But you got all these other medium authors that don't have the hype, but still wrote good books that people will enjoy, and they don't know how to advertise it. But there's people in the Simon & Schuster that know about advertising. They got to know about advertising books. That's their whole job, right? So why aren't they investigating? How do you advertise on social media? How do you get people to buy a book on TikTok? How do you get people to buy a book on Instagram? How do you why aren't they having people investigating the algorithms over and over and over? And that should be their sole job, because they're 85% of the profit of the book goes to them. That's like, why wouldn't you invest time and money in that? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. But
I mean, I got to think the answer is because the ROI is less than one. Because somewhere they concluded that like every dollar I spend on that is 85 cents back and not worth it. I got to feel like that's the answer, but I don't know.
I feel like they're living in the past, because
that's probably true too.
because what they're doing works for them, and it still works because they get that first month of income basically. And then on top of that, now the author's like, well, I'm going to pay cash if I want the book to sell money. But then the problem with that is because they're only getting 15%, it doesn't even make sense for them to do it in Facebook, because you'll never, on advertising on Meta, if you're only getting 15% of the sales, you'll never make that back. You'll never get that ratio.
I don't think so either. I'm not an expert on meta ads, but I can barely get my stuff to 1-to-1 when I'm doing direct sales, and that's me keeping.
And you need almost a 10-to-1 just to get a profit at 15%.
Exactly. It's like I don't.
It's more than that, because Amazon's going to take their cut too, 30 to 40% too. So you kind of need a 15-to-1 to just to break even.
Yeah, that's right. Because the printing costs, even if you print yourself and distribute yourself, there's still a lot of costs right there. Like, I mean, it costs, it costs $4 to print a book. It costs another, couple bucks to ship the book. So you're only going to make so much. At best, you're going to make like $6-7 a book. And that's not bad. Don't get me wrong. That's great royalty money, but you pay for it in advertising. Like Meta definitely charged you at the butt for those clicks.
Well, I mean, ideally you're getting at least 1-to-1. That's why you're still advertising on Meta. And then one week you won't do it, and you're like, okay, that's enough. I guess I'm out now. Next book. But
that's exactly right.
I wanted to talk. I know you only got like 15 more minutes. I wanted to talk about just the types of memoirs, and then the type of memoir you're about to write with your what are you calling it? Over a beer.
Over a beer, yeah.
I wonder if you. I'm going to suggest another title.
Please.
Knee deep in hand grenade pins.
Knee deep in hand grenade pins. You don't think that's a little too Tim Kennedy-ish or Tim Kennedy-ish? Are we going to draw? Are we going to draw ridicule from the similarities?
That's where we grew up. Isn't that what we grew up? There I was, or there I was. That might be the there I was. No shit.
No shit. There I was. Yeah. Actually, you're right. Those are good titles too, because these are all war stories, and it's what these are. Like the initial story that I just did the interview for is just crazy story about a dude shooting up a car with a minigun, and it just explodes with blood like a Tarantino movie. And you find out that he thinks he killed like a whole car of orphans, but actually it was just full of coolers of blood from the hospital. There's this guy like speeding after curfew, and so there's just blood pouring out of this thing, and he's like, oh, what the hell did I do? Just stories like that. They're all like that. Knee deep in hand grenade pins.
And then we had one where we had all that training before we went over about how to take the antenna off and wrap it on the windshield, and it shatters so you can get in there. And we're taking this thing. There's this car parked outside, and we were afraid we saw something in it, and through the window we were afraid there was a bomb because we weren't sure about the source, blah blah blah. And everyone's real excited, like, I'm gonna die. And they whipped it out there and broke the windshield of this poor guy's car. And then my intelligence sergeant like, hey, dumbass, what are you doing? It's like, we need to check the car. And he just opens the door because it was unlocked. And he's like, and there was nothing in there. And then we ended up having to pay for his windshield.
Yep. There's a lot of those moments for sure. But that's this style of memoir, right? So this is, it's like knocking on ghostwriting. In a sense, because it's a collection of other people's short stories. So I guess it's not quite ghostwriting, because I think in the end I'm going to put my name on it and say that, hey, I wrote these stories and this is it. But it's me telling other people's stories, not me telling my own. And so it's a different flavor of memoir. But there's so many guys out there that don't write. There's so many guys out there that will never write their story down, but they like telling them, again, over a beer, right? They like sitting there over a beer and bullshitting about them. And I want to collect, 15, 20 of those and see how they come together. See if the book works.
I think I here's something to think about: collecting like 30 or 40 and finding a theme, like a through line. Like, even if it's just, these are in Afghanistan, these are Iraq, these are in the other GWAT areas, Africa or Syria, and because there's not enough in those, you might put them all together. Southcom, that might be one way you could look at it, but you could also look at it as war and downtime and however you want to do it. But I would look for a theme that might, because that's what a lot of anthologies do, right? They're always like looking. I've seen a couple like superhero ones, and even the fantasy and science fiction ones are kind of like world building or robots or something like that. So it's a theme oriented thing. So that might be a suggestion I'd give you.
No, it makes perfect sense. I need to get the interviews done and see what I got. I'm gonna have a big pile of stories, and the question is, how do you turn those into something that's enjoyable to read, right? And yeah, to your point, how do you do that? How do you weave it into something? It's not going to have a narrative necessarily, but it should at least
but
have like a theme.
It's just like the old books. I don't know if you were reading these books back in the day. There, when I was like 25, there was everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten was the title of like this book. Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be a big series because he would have that first one, that's all it was called. And it was such a big hit. Then he was like, reference, this or reference this. It was all different kinds of themes. And they just went off, kind of down that road. And I think there was 20 of them in the end.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Idiot's Guide to Whatever's. I mean, there's a bunch of them that are kind of similar, right? Where they take it's great. It's a good model. People like that kind of, I guess, approachability. You're like, okay, I kind of know what I'm getting when I get into this. And that's pretty cool. But first, we just got to get the stories on paper. We got to figure out what they are. I mean, there's so many parts. And
that's what you wanted me to do. You wanted me to give you like the interview for your interviews. You already did one interview and I've already missed the mark on that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
But if you have one, because if you have one of the things that came out during that interview, it took about an hour, and it was just me. He told me a story like, okay, let me pick this part a little bit. Like you said this. Right. Okay, well, was it cold? Was it hot? And I still have just an open chat thread with him. We're like, all right, man, I'm describing the room that you walked into. I have this image in my head. Is that match? He's like, oh yeah, that, but it was this. Is like, was it hot? He's like, no, it was ice cold. The ACs were cranking. It was like 50 degrees in there. Like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. So I want to get the ability to pull as much as I can out during the interview. And the best way to do that is to pregame a little, like, hey, here, look at this. Think this through in this kind of way. And then whether or not you're a good storyteller, some guys are really not good storytellers. You're like, I'm going to help you tell a good story. Some guys just do it naturally. This guy was one of those.
Yeah. So I'll send you what I got. So one of the things to write a compelling, like, short story, for lack of a better word, you want to know why today. Like, why did this happen today? And what was the ball of chaos that came into the life that started this whole thing going down this road? In the case of, I think you got one about a snake bite. Obviously, the ball of chaos was the snake bite. And then there was what happened afterwards. So the first thing would be what's the ball of chaos? And it might be that they got a call and they had to go out. So that was the inciting incident, for lack of a better word, of the whole episode. Or it might be like someone decided they wanted to go get some ice cream late at night at the thing. And then that started the thing, right? But then ideally somewhere near not like a 75%, 60, 75% mark, you've built up to a point where someone has to make a really hard decision. Mm-hmm. And that crisis question with stakes on both sides and people having to make hard decisions, it's hard to capture in real life sometimes, because a lot of times it's very linear. This is the only thing we could only do this. But if you can build it where there was a decision process, and it was a really difficult decision because there was pros and cons for each one. And as the leader of the situation, I had to keep that in consideration and go this direction. That's what really builds tension it's easiest to show it with a movie, a fiction movie. So if you think of Hunger Games, right? You had a double ending there. You had the ending, I don't know if you remember it, but if you had a double ending, you had one where Katniss, the hero, she's got her bow and arrow, and her friend Peeta gets taken by another tribute, Cato, and he's going to kill him if she doesn't put the bow down. And she's an archer, so she can take the shot. And that's her gift. And she takes a shot, hits him in the hand, he falls off, gets eaten by mutant dogs, and saves this guy. If that movie had ended right then, it would have been a good movie. Wouldn't have been a great movie. Would have been a good movie. But what happened? Then the real inciting incident is they say, hey, only one person can survive, so kill Peeta. And Peeta's like, hey, you deserve it. You have family. Kill me. But throughout the whole movie, she's never killed except for self-defense. She's never sought people out and hunted them like the other people did. So morally, this is not who she is. She wants to get back to her family. That's been her goal since the beginning of the movie, to get back to her family. And so when she sees PETA and she has to kill PETA to get back to her family, and then she's realizing that this is all the government manipulating people and trying to take away hope, she's like, no, I'm not that person. I'm not going to do it. And then she has the poison berries. They said, share the poison berries. They almost eat them. And they're like, no, we're just kidding. You can have both win, because they got to have someone win to give hope to the people. And that made it a great movie. That made it almost a tearjerker at the end. You're like, oh, look at her. She like sacrificed herself to do the right thing. And so what that she may not have gone, I mean, it may have gone bad. It may have gone a different direction. She wouldn't have got home and take care of her family. So you have these things that you're making hard decisions. And so in real life, you have to kind of dig, because a lot of people, they don't remember why they made this decision, or they don't want to remember sometimes too. And so when I do memoirs and interviews, I look for those scenarios where, why did you decide to do that? Well, what else could I have done? I was like, well, you could have done this, you could have done this, could do this, but you chose to do this. Why? I was like, well, it seemed like the only option at the time. I was like, but it wasn't. So why do you think you made this decision? And I have to really dig sometimes. And sometimes they're like, wow, I never really thought about that. And so sometimes I get good stuff. Sometimes I get gold. And sometimes I get, just because I did. I was like, all right, well, that's what I'm going to write. That's the story. I'm going to write it, man.
Just because. Dude, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the dig often reveals gold. Like in this case, the whole hook for him being over there is he's one of those guys that had to go to combat to re-enlist to get the tax-free bonus. And so he's like, all right, 30 days home by Christmas. The unit made him stay for 30 days. So his whole thing is like, I'm just this 30-day augmentee, like over here working with, TF, whoever, to do this thing. But when I start picking apart that incident with the minigun in the car, he's like, the reason I was so concerned about it is my dad was actually in My Lai. So he was one of the recce guys that showed up at the end of the My Lai massacre in Vietnam and had like this moment of like, hey, whoa, what the fuck happened here? And so he's like, oh no, I just killed a car of orphans. I just did the exact thing. And so as I started talking, it was like, this is great stuff, man. Like this is really the moment. Like when they're waiting to go clear this vehicle, there's blood pouring out of it. And he's just like melting inside, trying to figure out if he just killed a car full of kids. And you're like, that's good stuff. But that's also like real stories. Like that's what stories look like. And then you get all the comedy relief of the planes, trains, and automobiles trying to come home, and what kind of, trying to browbeat the Filipino lady that works across the wagon lit to buy me a ticket, but she just won't budge. You're like, I'm stuck in Kuwait. And so, to your point, yeah, like you got to pull that stuff out of people. Like people will tell the story and it will be, the short and simple and, less complicated version.
The polished version they've told 50 times, and they didn't want to make it too long because it was over a beer. And they're like, oh, there's one time I slaughtered this car and all this blood was pouring out. And they're like, oh my God. And it's like, but it was a blood bank.
No. But you're right. And if you want to write that, if you want to build that tension, if you want to put yourself in the moment, because he's telling the story, he's like, man, I'm saying this stuff. Nobody's responded. But you can't just say it like that in a book. You have to build it up. You have to really make that moment come to life. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out how well we can do it. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time.
There's also, there's so much logistical admin stuff that goes on, like that no one thinks about. Like, okay, we got in a firefight. Now there's enemy dead bodies everywhere. Like the civilians would be like, oh, you got in the firefight. All you guys survived. Good to go. You go home. Well, no.
Yep. There's condolence payments. There's dead bodies. There's reports to write. There's just like
things that have to be done. And we're picking up the bodies and we're putting them in body bags, because you leave dead bodies around the village and stuff. People get sick, and we got to figure it all out. And we got to figure it out.
Yep. And that's the fun of it, though. So that's what I hope this to be a collection of, is the stories behind the stories, right? Everybody's heard, you can read Chris Kyle's book, like American Sniper, and you could read about the coolest headshots in the universe, and hey, good on him, man. But this is going to be just a lot of the other stuff and other stuff that happened, because I think those stories, man, feedback on the most recent book, feedback on About Fat has been, people love that. People love the just like some dickhead painting doors and getting an argument with an NCO. Like, people like those little moment in the life stories, and I want to write more of them.
That's what I don't know. You ever watch China Beach?
Nope, haven't seen it.
I can't find it anywhere. It's not. I think it's not streaming because Paint It Black was the theme song, and they probably don't have the rights to it, so they're trying to figure it. That's why that Emilio Estevez, Jesse James one. What was that called? That movie he did about Jesse James.
Not Young Guns. That was
Young Guns, but it had John Bon Jovi as the thing, and so they couldn't put it out on YouTube or on Netflix or anything for the longest time, or even Amazon, because they didn't have the rights to the music. And finally, I saw it. Finally, I was like, oh, finally! And they cut the whole beginning off because it has the music in it, right?
It's got the music.
Like, damn, what the hell, man? So. And the same thing with Heavy Metal. I don't know if you ever remember that movie, Heavy Metal.
The cartoon? You talking about the cartoon? Yeah. Classic.
Music. Well, it didn't come out for the longest time because they had to get all the rights to the music in order to get the thing out, and it didn't come out for the longest time. And then when it did, they had to change some of it because they still didn't get all the music. But so China Beach was about Vietnam. Specifically, it was following a nurse, which a best-selling book just came out called Women. I don't know if you know about this. And it was the author, it was fiction, but the author interviewed all the women that you could find that were in Vietnam, most of them in the nursing industry. And, they talk about how when they came back from Vietnam, that people were they're like, I served in Vietnam. I was like, you're a woman, you didn't serve in Vietnam. And it was almost worse for them to come back than the men who were getting spit on and, treated poorly. But when the women came back, they couldn't even convince people that they were in the war and all the PTSD they went through and getting shot while they're taking care of their patients and things like that. And so she wrote a fiction book about some specific characters, but it was all based on her interviews, and she compiled some of these interviews into single characters and showed what they went through, during Vietnam and afterwards. And it was a best-selling book. I talked to my dad had some friends that were nurses in Vietnam, and they're super moved by it because all of it was realistic for them, what they went through. And they just never got any acknowledgement for going. No one thanked them for their service, but no one thanked anyone for going back from Vietnam, but even less than them. They don't even believe in them. It's not that they didn't take it for the service. They don't even believe they participated.
Like, oh, sure, you're in the hospital. I bet it was rough over there in the hospital. They're like, nah, it probably was. There's probably some real hairy moments.
China Beach made a superstar out of the woman. I forget her name now. But it was 3 or 4 years. I remember I used to watch it. And there was in the Rangers. I used to watch it in the day room every Thursday or whatever. And it was about this. It had the patrols and the platoons going through the woods and stuff, but it was showing all the stuff behind the scenes, the nurses and all the logistics problems and things like that. And so I think there was a show called Over There, which was about Afghanistan, that tried to do this, but I don't think they did a very good job.
I don't remember it lasting very long.
I got so many admin stories from SF, just being in charge of our own fire base and getting the stupid, who ordered this stuff? Why did we get a bunch of garbage when all I wanted was whatever, and just all the logistics part of that's the other thing when I talk to guys that are in other units, CAG and whatnot. They're like, oh yeah, we were doing missions every night and stuff, but they were headquarters inside of a bigger base where they didn't have to worry about the security around the base really most of the time. I mean, maybe in the beginning they were running bases themselves, but for the most part, other people were running bases and they had a perimeter inside the base. So and they were just launching with helicopters while we're running the base, got to figure out where am I getting my gas from? Where am I getting my food from? Oh, food trucks were hijacked for the last 5 weeks. So now what am I going to do? You know, and on top of that, you know, I got to figure out where I'm going to practice shooting because I don't have a range. So I have to make sure that I'm not going to shoot a village behind the range at 500 meters behind the range or something. And then I don't got any helicopters. So I'm moving by vehicle for 18 hours. What time do we leave? And how do we get resupplied? And who do I leave behind by themselves? Because I just got my team on the base, and just all the logistics of it was just like, I'm a mayor with no people. And it's yeah.
No, you're not wrong, man. That's what makes the story so good. Is there's just so many versions. Like one of the guys I'm doing for this book is going to be just an 88 Mike in Iraq. Like, and if you think the truck drivers in Iraq didn't have hairy deployments, like, but there's nothing sexy about being a truck driver, right? Like, man, those dudes, like some of those guys have some war-torn stories because you're just running convoys and just getting smoked all the time. And I just want to make sure that those stories are all out there. You know, there's so many good ones, and it's awesome that there's like, you know, cool Navy SEALs that are like have the best stories ever, and those are like the highest number one best ones. But there's a lot of other stories too, and I want to just get more of them out there. But I gotta get going soon, man. I gotta shut it down.
Okay, yeah. So I remember the day I told my mechanic he's going on the mission with us. Like, what do you mean? I'm a mechanic. I was like, what if my vehicle dies on the way, dude?
Hey, you can shoot a gun, buddy. I need you to change tires too. Like those tires aren't easy to change.
It's like, okay. All right.
Come on, buddy.
All right, everyone. I'll talk to you guys next week.
Hey, later. Good seeing you, Randy.